Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
It's The In Show, Australia's only show dedicated to innovation from Adelaide, Australia and across the globe.
Hi, it's David Grice and Troy Simcock. We are talking to big people with big ideas, those people up for really making the world a better place. And I've got to say, the future looks very bright in their hands. The Hybrid World Adelaide is just a few weeks away, July 20 to 24th at the Adelaide Convention Centre. And again, The In Show is part of the action, David.
Yeah, look, I was so excited to be a part of it last year and got so much out of just being involved. I mean, I was involved in the Hybrid World Lab. We were doing daily updates from the event and just talking to all these incredible people. I think one of the highlights for me last year was the guy that had built a robot of himself and put the robot in to deliver his lectures at university.
Yeah, that's right. And look, remarkably realistic as well.
It was incredible. And the fact is that because he had artificial intelligence behind the robot, any question that a student would ask it, the artificial intelligence would answer. So therefore the answers had to be correct.
He literally could be in two places at once.
Definitely. And if he built a few of them, he'd be in many.
Exactly. And it's great that it's moved from the Tonsley Innovation Precinct to the Adelaide Convention Centre. It's a really central location, but really with now one under the belt, you get the feeling that this is going to be exciting, whether you're someone that's always been obsessed with science and innovation, perhaps you have your own startup, or whether you're just someone that's curious about what the future holds. It's going to be such an enlightening few days.
Look, it is. And just so many different subjects being discussed as well. And, we're talking about space and, agriculture technology and all sorts of other areas that are really going to shape the future of not only the way we live, but also how we get employment and what jobs might even exist in the future.
Absolutely. Hybrid World Adelaide is a digital entertainment and technology event that really does explore the future of a hybrid world. And you could get along for free. We've got a double pass to give away at the end of this podcast, so you can either listen to our next interview or just scroll right through to the end
and
you
listen.
Win. Well, speaking of listening, I'm going to be listening for the first time too, because you caught up with Robert Tercek, who's one of the creative directors of Hybrid World Adelaide. I mean, a really influential guy and someone who's been up to big things for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the great thing is that you might remember last Hybrid World, we actually interviewed Robert about what the whole event was about and what he was up to and those sorts of things. But this time what we did is we talked about what has happened since we spoke to him last, and that's really it's really exciting to see where his life has taken some deviations and changed, and what he's developed in the last 6 or so months.
Let's hear what Robert had to say when David caught up with him on the In Show via Skype.
So, Robert, last year when we talked with you, you were doing some pretty incredible work. Has anything changed for you in the sort of the past 12 months?
The good news for me has been that some of the ideas and some of the my analysis of trends has really captured the imagination of a broader audience. So in the past year, I've started to really connect with large-scale audiences that are interested in the things that I've been writing about and talking about for many years.
And how's that been? So has it been a sort of a journey of being on the speaker circuit and things like that, or are you working on some specific projects?
I do both. So I do quite a bit of public speaking. That's how I get the word out. And the good news there is that now I'm starting to address very large audiences. For instance, just 10 days ago, I was on stage in front of 6,000 people live at the Docker convention. Docker is a cloud-based technology called containers. So I'm getting the opportunity now almost every week to speak to large groups of people about the ideas that I've been developing and working on. But at the same time, there's also projects that I work on and things that I'm developing of my own, working with a number of interesting startup companies, for instance.
So are you able to share any of the things you have been working on?
Sure. One of the interesting things I've been doing is helping governments figure out ways to deal with digital transformation. Much of the writing and thinking about digital transformation is focused on business, of course, because that's what seems to get hit first. But our government institutions have not kept the pace with the change. And so I've had the chance to work with city governments and state governments and a few national governments around the world in matters that pertain to media, tax collection, maybe the gamification of taxes, government presence, smart cities, and so forth. these are really important topics. The cool thing here, David, is that this is growing. And again, I see sort of expanding field of cities that are adopting smart city policies or launching some sort of connected city plan. It's not just happening in say the North America or some of the European cities. Well, for instance, that's happening right there in Adelaide as well.
Yeah, it is. It really is, and I think with our 10 gig city initiative and all of the other things that are going on, it's a really exciting time. Is there any particular city that you're seeing as probably the leader in this space?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I get around all over the world because of the nature of my work, and the cities we tend to think of as the most digitally advanced would probably be Beijing, San Francisco, maybe New York, certainly London. These are the cities that come to mind. But I think what we can talk about now, David, is something really different, which is placeless innovation. Placeless innovation means that we can innovate any place. A lot of it has to do with the advance of high-speed digital networks, particularly 4G and soon 5G, but also that high-speed network that you're getting in Adelaide, for instance, that gigabit network. That's really going to have a transformative effect because it means that any company, no matter where you're based, can now compete on a global level. In fact, that's what investors are demanding. That's why there's so much interest in unicorns, which is essentially a startup company with the potential to scale to planetary level. That would have been ridiculous 20 years ago. Absurd notion that a startup company can scale to planetary size. But today, it's a baseline requirement. That's exactly what the investment community is looking for, particularly in venture financing, is a company that's got the potential to scale to planetary size. And it doesn't matter where you're based. You don't have to be based in Silicon Valley or Beijing or one of the other innovation centers. You could be based in Adelaide. At Hybrid World, we're going to be talking about companies based in Australia and several coming from Adelaide who have the potential to scale to that size, to planetary level. That's one of our primary focuses this year.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad you started to bring Hybrid World into the conversation. What can we expect this year in the program?
So, the Hybrid World program has been focused on the technologies that are going to make the biggest impact in the economy. And broadly, the economy touches government, of course. Touches city government and state government, of course. It also touches education. So we interpret the economy pretty broadly. You might say society. And there are several core technologies that are going to make a major impact in the next 5 years. We're going to cover them at Hybrid World. And so if you're listening and you're interested in this program, what you'll learn at the Hybrid World Conference is about artificial intelligence, machine intelligence, deep learning, the ability maybe to develop conscious computers. So that's one major thread. Another major thread is smart city initiatives and autonomous vehicles. Those two things fit together because autonomous vehicles have to drive inside of a known cityscape. And so all the smart city projects around the world are now starting to conform to autonomous vehicle projects and coordinate. A third topic that's going to be very relevant to folks in Adelaide and South Australia is privatized space. And in particular, the launching of new satellites to connect with ground stations, to track things on the ground. That could be a head of cattle, or it could be an agricultural institution or a farm, or it could be tracking container ships across the ocean. That's happening right now. And there are about 10 startup companies in Adelaide focused on private space. So that's a great big topic. We'll also have things about augmented reality, gaming, virtual currencies, cryptocurrencies. I mean, there are so many core technologies that people need to know about. We're trying to pack them all into a very, very action-filled 2-day conference. And then around that conference, there's also a week-long festival that's open to the public where we're going to showcase technology and make it really accessible to families. And there's also there's a startup lab that we did last year and it was a great big success. So we're doing it even bigger this year, where we bring in a group of startup companies. Some of them are very early stage, and we bring a team of experts that we call mentors to coach them and guide them over the weekend. So it's sort of like an intensive boot camp for startup companies. All of this is happening at the end of July in Adelaide, and the conference dates are the 23rd and 24th of July.
That's fantastic, and I mean, I'm a graduate of the Hybrid World Lab from last year, and I certainly can say how much of a difference that's made in terms of the way we approach our business now, sort of going into the future. Can I just rewind a minute? You talked about conscious computers. Can you just elaborate a little bit on what that is and what it means?
Yeah, sure. So, the field of artificial intelligence has gotten a lot of attention in the past couple of years. One of the reasons it's happened is that we have such enormous data sets. We're gathering so much data as we start to track and measure things that previously were untrackable. The data sets are so large that we can't manage them as human beings. Our apparatus for comprehending huge data sets is really limited, and so we need the machine's help to do that. So as a result, we've seen a surge of artificial intelligence applications, and mostly what these are just one version of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of different ways to approach artificial intelligence. What we're talking about here is deep learning, and deep learning is essentially using a neural network, a relatively simple neural network, and throwing enormous amounts of data at it. And that neural network begins to learn. It begins to discern patterns. It starts to identify patterns. And as it trains and gets more and more accurate, it can do that faster and at greater scale. So what we're really talking about is throwing huge amounts of data at relatively simple algorithms. But there are a lot of other approaches to artificial intelligence. And one of our speakers last year, Dr. Philip Almeida, who's an expert in AI, identified a need, which is as we start to connect the human brain to the internet directly without, say, a screen or a keyboard or a voice command, but just do a direct neural connection. He developed that technology working with the U.S. Defense Department. And it caused him to realize that we're going to need an entirely different approach to artificial intelligence, not one that just makes lists or takes huge amounts of data and crunches the numbers into a way that we can understand them, but rather a kind of intelligence that understands how human brains think, that actually is modeled on human intelligence and can understand how human brains think. Because if we're going to connect a computer to a human brain, that data will be incomprehensible to a computer unless it understands how human brains think. So that led Philip to speculating about what might arise from that kind of research, and he started to develop a theory around what a conscious machine might be. Philip's coming back this year, so Philip Almeida will be back. He gave an absolutely masterpiece talk last year. It's one of the best speeches I've ever heard. It stirred the entire audience and inspired them, and he's coming back this year, so he will continue to develop those theories for the audience at the Hybrid World Conference.
That's look, it's just sounding like an incredibly exciting program that you've got ahead of us. I'm also going to go back to where you talked about placeless innovation, because I think this is something that's really, really vital for emerging businesses to really understand. That it, like you said, it's about not about the location of where you are. I mean, in my experience, my team is based in Adelaide, Melbourne, and Washington. So we've got people all over the world that are working on this same project, and bringing people together in this way is just something that I just remember years and years ago when I was first in business, having to actually go to America if I wanted to break into a market there. Whereas now, we have all these tools available to us that enables us to do that. How are you placing the importance on this whole idea of placeless innovation?
And personally, I'm inspired by it. In terms of the businesses that I'm working at and helping, 6 of the projects I'm working on involve exactly that, a kind of virtual company, a placeless company, a place that has no headquarters. They don't have an office. They don't have a secretary or a receptionist. There aren't desks. If they need a desk, if they need to have a meeting room, then they just go use a WeWork. They use one of those co-working spaces where you can kind of borrow a space if you need it. And this gives companies tremendous amounts of flexibility. Some of the examples, I'm sure you've encountered this yourself. The best software development talent, the best coders aren't always in the city where your company is based. Why would you limit your company to just the coding talent that's available in your town? The same is true with markets. Sometimes the best customers are not in the same city where you're based. So why would you limit yourself? With placeless innovation and cloud-based delivery of services, we can now reach customers all over the world, and we can use similar tools, coordination tools, to manage staff who are located all over the world as well. And this is early days for this idea, but we already see hundreds of examples of it. Everyone I know is involved in some sort of startup business that doesn't have a headquarters, it doesn't have a centralized office. Instead, it has a workforce that's distributed or dispersed across a wide geographic area, exactly like the project that you're talking about, David. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's also about finding with the team. It's finding the people that are are the experts in their field, and looking broadly for those people. And then when you find them, my gosh, the magic is just incredible. And the fact that you're able to, because of time zone differences, you're basically able to work on the project 24 hours a day.
That's also true. It's a really good point. For certain businesses, that's essential, right? So for certain businesses, it's really important that the sun never sets. And if your company is based in every location around the world, then the sun never does set on your business.
Which is, it increases your productivity levels in an incredible way.
Yeah.
Is there any of the startups that you're working with that you're able to sort of share a little bit about what you're actually working on with them?
The companies that I'm working with mostly are undercover because they're fairly early stage. But I can tell you about two projects in particular. There's a group called UNET. You probably know Tom Haydu.
Yes.
Who's an American entrepreneur who lives in Adelaide and was the chief innovator in the state of South Australia. He and his business partner, Andy Milburn, have developed a technology that can secure a digital network. And it's a completely novel approach. I'd say it's a mind-blowing approach. What they've come up with, their background is in the software for the music industry. And they developed this from that background because, of course, the music industry has been suffering from all kinds of problems, in particular piracy. And so they developed this idea that they could secure a network. And then they realized, we've actually solved a problem that is much broader than the music industry. It applies to anyone who's shipping digital information across the network. So this is a company that's pre-product. They have the core technologies, and they're in the process of productizing. And so one of the things that we're doing together now is evaluating opportunities as they arise to apply that technology to things as diverse as the Internet of Things, network security for offices, home security, of course, defense applications, and corporate security. So there's a number of places where it might be applied. This is a product, and this is a software capability that has not yet been productized. Very early stage. Super interesting project, and of course, there's tremendous need because everyone's under pressure right now from getting hacked. Another project that I'm working on that I'm excited about is with the organization GS1. GS1 is the global standards body for identity. You might know them as the barcode company. That's how people tend to think of them. They issue identities for products. They issue about 5 billion unique identities each year for barcodes. And so those barcodes relate to the identity of that product line at the SKU level, the shopkeeping unit level. The project I've been working on with them is to serialize those identities down to individual items and match the physical item with all the digital data so that barcode will serve as kind of a link. You might think of it like a URL. When you scan that barcode, it doesn't just tell you what the item is, but it also will link you to all the information that comes with it, the marketing data, the manuals, the warranty information, where and when it was produced, how it was handled in shipment, whether it was shipped appropriately, whether it was kept at the right temperature, how long it's been in storage, what the lifespan of that product is. You even might imagine in the future, there'll be a digital usage history on a product that I sell. So for instance, if I sell you my car, I might transfer over the ownership records and the repair records to you so you can have access to that information. So we start to envision this idea that we could reinvent the barcode for the 21st century and make it a link to all of the digital information. And this has led us into a very lively field that I hope to talk about when I'm at Hybrid World at the end of July, which is digital twins. Are you familiar with the term digital twin? I don't know if I've talked to you about that in the past.
No, I haven't heard that one.
Well, it's a kind of a new concept. It's been around for a while, but in a very specific application. So it hasn't really escaped from that domain, but it's starting to grow very quickly. The place where it's been used is in particular in aviation. If you think about a jet engine, it's a pretty complex part, pretty expensive. And so the companies that make jet engines like General Electric have begun to develop sensors that they can embed in that engine that allow them to track the performance of that engine over time. And that means that they can start to tell when a part is wearing out. What I didn't realize when I heard about this is that every jet engine is different because they fly differently. They fly through different weather conditions, different air, and that actually changes the performance of the engine over time. So you create a digital twin that's unique for every single jet engine, and that allows a company like GE to guarantee uptime, if you will, to tell their airline partners, we can predict when this part's going to fail. We'll change the parts preemptively. We'll do prescriptive maintenance on a part. So that concept of a digital twin made sense for a high-end, very expensive part like a jet engine in the past. But as you know, the cost of sensors is dropping so fast, and the ability to connect and detect those sensors is growing so quickly that we're going to start to be able to instrument everything. So I'll give you an example. Your car probably has about 1,000 sensors in it already. Now, those sensors aren't connected to the network, but they will be, because connected cars are now outselling traditional cars 10 to 1. And so soon, most cars on the road will be connected. That means those cars will be able to talk to the service center, and you'll be able to detect a part that's going to wear out. So what we're talking about with the digital twin is a perfect digital representation of a physical product. Some people call it the cloud half of a product, right? It's like the cloud shadow of a product, where you have a physical product, but then in the cloud, there's a digital replica, almost a perfect digital representation of that product. Well, here's where it gets interesting. In the most advanced applications of this digital twin, they're now using that digital twin to make decisions about how the real world part should operate. So actually now the digital part is beginning to govern the real world part. That virtual version is now the more important version. That's what everyone's looking at so closely. And it tells them what to do to the physical version. And not only that, that digital version, you can do different experiments on and tests on. And so you can start to figure out what the tolerance is, where it might break, what conditions might cause it to fail, and so forth. And what I must stress is that this is not just limited to like an industrial part, like a jet engine. That's the origin of the concept. But this is very rapidly spreading out of industry into all sorts of other fields. So you can create a digital twin of a factory. You can create a digital twin of a business process. And as long as you're tracking the right things, if you can identify what the key things to track are or to monitor, then you can actually build a digital representation and instrument that so that it will alert you when you're going off track. It'll give you better eyes and ears on the actual physical thing. So it's a fascinating idea. This is one of the ideas I've been playing with for a long time, this concept of the digital world and the physical world and how they're merging and blending, how they're changing each other. But this digital twin concept has gotten me very excited.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. And I think in some cases, what you're talking about to some people could be absolutely frightening. But to me, all these sorts of concepts and the ability that we have now to look at how digital technology is able to help and empower our lives to go to different places and, think of different things and different ways of doing things. I think this is just an incredibly exciting time to be alive.
It is. It's a good time to be alive. It's a good time to be an entrepreneur because there's a lot more available to you to work with, and you don't have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
The cost of launching a new business has dropped by a factor of 1,000 in the last 15 years. Wow. I'm going to repeat that so your listeners can really understand what I just said.
Wow.
In the year 2000, it cost about $5 million to launch a startup company. And a big chunk of that cost was buying equipment, renting office space, setting up servers and capacity so that you could serve your product over the internet at scale and so forth. Today, you just don't need those. And so we've seen 3 orders of magnitude decrease in cost. And now it costs about $5,000 to launch a business, which is an extraordinary concept, from $5 million to $5,000. And the reason that's happening is because of the cloud. That's number one. And number two, because of open source software. And there are now so many cloud-based tools available to businesses. These are not just for large companies. Of course, large companies have had software tools for many, many years. But now a small business, even a virtual company, the kinds that we were talking about before, those placeless companies, can avail themselves of tools on the internet that are free or nearly free. And I'm talking about things, well, like, for instance, this call is happening on Skype. So there's Skype, there's Zoom, there's Google Plus. There's all sorts of ways to communicate with people that cost nothing. Where in the old days you had to have a telephone conference room and so forth. None of that is necessary anymore. You can also do project management. You can do project development collaboratively across the network. There are all kinds of other communication tools like Slack. These chat and evanescent messaging applications that allow people to communicate in real time. There's storage solutions so that you can transfer files, send files, and so forth. E-commerce solutions, tons of marketing solutions, about 7,000 marketing solutions available. And these are mostly available on a free or low fee basis, so that for a startup company, you just don't have to spend that much to get in business and to set up your business. Everyone can work from home. All you need is a laptop and a smartphone, and you're off to the races. And that's triggering a wave of innovation. So the second thing about that is, not only does it knock out cost, all the cloud-based innovation, but it also accelerates innovation by driving more and more businesses forward. As you launch more and more companies, as they compete, the most successful companies are going to be the ones that innovate and come up with the best ideas. I mean, that's simple, right? That's basic math. What we're seeing is an explosion of startup companies. People are trying so many different things, and out of nowhere, seemingly, an idea can catch hold and really start to grow quickly. And so this is an exciting time to be alive, and it's a great time to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and we're really looking forward to everything that's going to happen for Hybrid World. Is there a highlight that for you in the program that you're really, really excited about?
There are a couple. I mean, certainly I talked about Philip Alveda. He's coming back. He'll do a great bit on artificial intelligence, and we have several other speakers on similar topics. But we have a whole space-based track that's talking about all the space-based innovation in South Australia. That'll be really interesting for Australians to hear about their own country with world-beating companies starting out. And then there are a couple of other good things happening. We have some local stars, some local talent. So we found a way to include most of the local universities in the program. They're going to showcase some of the local innovation that they're doing. And then a good friend of mine from Finland is coming. Andre Shakur is coming from Finland. He's the author of The Finnish Miracle, and he's going to talk to us about how to design businesses that are built for export. I think this is a really relevant message for Australian entrepreneurs. Last year at Hybrid World, one piece of feedback I got again and again and again from people who attended is that Australians are too shy. They're too modest. They're too humble. They will focus on Australian markets, or maybe they'll just focus on South Australia as a market. And they're self-limiting in that way. They don't give themselves permission to imagine a business that can exceed the boundaries of Australia, the national boundaries. And what we're going to try to do on the second day of the conference, on the 24th of July, we're going to focus the entire day on bigger than Adelaide, bigger than South Australia, ideas that are bigger than Australia itself, ideas that are world scale. And we're going to show some companies that are doing that.
Well, Robert, I just can't wait to be able to be there this year and just to experience all that you've shared with us. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to join us on the In Show.
I'm happy to do it, and I look forward to seeing folks in Adelaide at the end of July for Hybrid World. Thanks very much, David.
That was digital pioneer Robert Tercek, one of the creative directors of Hybrid World Adelaide, talking to David on the In Show with Hybrid World Adelaide not far away, July 20 to 24th at the Adelaide Convention Centre. Yeah,
look, I can't wait. I just love hearing about what's coming. I think some of the speakers that we're about to sort of not only interview on the In Show, but we're about to be able to go and see is just going to be mind-blowing stuff.
What's great too, I reckon, so many of these people that are really intellectual, smart people, they're really beginning to understand how to communicate what they're doing as well, which is making it accessible, for people like you and me, and really easy for us to understand what's going on.
Absolutely. Look, Hybrid World's not just for the intellectual people and people that are real geeks. This is actually for people that have a real interest in different things, and if you're interested in finding out what's going on in the future or what's just before us or what's way ahead of us, this is the place to be.
Absolutely. And and if you're going to Hybrid World Adelaide from Adelaide, you really will get a bit of a glimpse into what the jobs of the future might be. Now, you can go for free just for listening to the In Show today. And thanks for taking the time to enjoy the podcast. There's a double pass to give away to Hybrid World Adelaide. All you need to do is like and share the podcast link on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll go in the running to win yourself a double. This is going to be 4 days of mind-blowing activity.
Absolutely, and you just can't miss it. It's just going to be fantastic. On the next In Show podcast, we're going into the world of space, but just in a really different way this time, Troy.
Yeah, Paddy Neumann is one of the most interesting people we've ever spoken to on the In Show. I mean, this guy sort of discovered his interest in space. It was more of a dream, I suppose, during high school. And then when he went to university, what he discovered is something that could quite genuinely change the world we live in.
I completely agree. And his discovery was about falling asleep in lectures and what that meant for him.
There's hope for us all. That's on the next In Show podcast.
The In Show. Subscribe to the In Show podcast on iTunes. Presented by David Grice and Troy Sincock. Music by Zach Grice. A Dave and the Beanstalk production.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.